Let's check in on the election campaign. The president has been in California and discussing the issue of the wildfires. Have a look.
If we ignore that science and sort of put our head in the sand and think it's all about vegetation management, we're not going to succeed together protecting Californians.
Okay. It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Hey, well, I don't think science knows, actually.
So, Greg, you've got a couple of issues that, well, and they're massive issues, really, that Donald Trump has had to deal with in terms of what's driven the debate right now in the United States. One is the wildfires issue and, slash climate change. Two, the Woodward book. And three, the Atlantic article, which reverberated in relation to the alleged, although denied, comments about troops.
Yeah, I think, Kieran, these are all bad issues for Trump. Trump is not having a real good period at the moment. The polls have tightened a little, but he's still a long, long way behind. I think he might have a 30% chance of winning, something like that. He's not out of the contest at all. But these are all bad issues for Trump. Trump loses on climate change generally, and the wildfires reinforce the climate change message. The Atlantic article was very important because it quoted Trump as ridiculing American troops. And the author, the journalist, a very credible person, and the comments were confirmed by independent reporting from Fox News. And that's very important because the troops vote for Trump. So if he loses even 3% of the troops or something, that could be enough to lose him the election. And then the Woodward book is truly bizarre because Trump gave Bob Woodward 17 or 18 long sit-down interviews and then said things which condemned himself out of his own mouth. So he said, for example, that he always knew COVID-19 was a deadly, terrible disease, vastly more deadly than the flu and so on. But he said the opposite in order to keep Americans calm. Well, the implication of that is that he lied when he said that it was no big deal. Now, a lot of people have called Trump a liar, but Woodward has the astonishing achievement of getting Trump to call himself a liar. Now, these may not move huge amounts of votes, but they do mean that for the past week, at the very least, Trump could not talk about the two issues which he has going for him, namely that he would be better to run the economy than Biden, and secondly, law and order, and maybe the third issue, which is Biden's manifest mental decline. So these have been, a bad several days for Trump. He's kind of holding steady or narrowing a little bit, but he's got to do a lot more if he's going to make up the ground that Biden is ahead.
I want to play as well a little bit of this forum that the president attended. He took questions from the audience. Have a look.
Just prior to this horrible situation coming in from China, when the virus came in, that was probably the highest point, home ownership for the black community. Home ownership, lower crime, the best jobs they've ever had, highest income, the best employment numbers they've ever had. If you go back and you want to look over many years, you could just go back 6 or 7 months from now. That was the best single moment in the history of the African-American people in this country.
Yeah, that was a town hall in Philadelphia. This ability, Trump loves getting in the audience, even though they're a bit more sparse at times like that. His rallies aren't, but he loves to get back into that context, doesn't he? And to be speaking to a live audience, that's when he's feeling most comfortable by the looks.
Oh, that's absolutely right, Kieran. I mean, he's a little bit like Bob Hawke in that way. He just draws enormous energy from his crowds. That was a very sparsely, obviously socially distanced audience there. And of course, part of Trump's tragedy is that what he's saying in that particular grab is essentially true. His economic policy, so Trump is a mixed grill. He's got his good parts and his bad parts, and it's dishonest intellectually to pretend that he's only good or only bad. But Trump's economic policies had been enormously successful. The pro-business, deregulation, tax-cutting approach that he took to the economy had indeed resulted in the lowest African-American unemployment rate since records were ever taken. that is a very powerful answer to the question, what does Trump think and do for African Americans? But Trump now cannot get over, the misfortune, which has not only killed nearly 200,000 Americans, but probably killed his presidency, of the COVID virus, because all of that's kind of been wiped out, so to speak. And apparently Trump spent months just railing against the injustice of fate in dealing him this blow. But presidents, like prime ministers, they just have to deal with what comes up. And he didn't deal very well with the virus. But his broader argument that his economic approach, even his social approach, is actually good for African Americans and good for Latino voters. There's a lot to say for that. That's a powerful argument if he could make it effectively.
Greg Sheridan, thanks as always.
Thanks, Kieran.